What is forthcoming in terms of criminal charges for former President Donald Trump? We are really getting into the meat of this now as we see criminal referrals from the January 6th House Committee, the Georgia investigation, the tax returns possibly exposing tax fraud and evasion are coming out within days. There is one opinion that is an interesting one, which is from former Watergate prosecutor Nick Akerman, who expects Donald Trump to face both state and federal charges. What would happen if that took place, we will discuss. But first, let's look at what Nick Akerman had to say on CNN yesterday. And his predictions are very clear and they sound confident. Now, remember, many times people say things confidently and they're wrong. So take that consideration.
What do you think happens? That's what everyone wants to know. What
Oh,
do you think
I
is
think
charge?
Donald Trump is going to be indicted. He's going to be indicted in Georgia, and I think he's going to be indicted by the feds. Right. I think they've got the evidence. We don't know exactly what a lot of these cooperating witnesses are saying. And I think that you've got someone like Mark Meadows, who's probably the weak link. And if you're looking for the one witness, the most likely to turn, I would vote him the most likely to turn.
What do you think?
So if this happened, what happens in the United States? Because this would be a very, very, very big deal. If a former president were to be indicted, there would be a number of issues that would have to be overcome. First and foremost, who sits on the jury? And as I've said before, if you had someone like Trump in front of a jury, how do you find a jury that is not going to be subject to appeal because of the preconceived notions and biases of those jurors? There are very few people in the United States who don't have a strong opinion about Donald Trump, either for or against. And if you find the people who genuinely don't have an opinion, they are usually acutely and painfully uninformed people that I would also worry about having on a jury simply due to their ability to understand what the hell is going on, if I'm able to speak candidly with you. So I do think that the jury question is a major, major question. But long before you even got to that, it's important to understand the framework around criminal charges for a president of the United States. First, you have to understand the legal immunity component. While a president is president, there is significant legal immunity from prosecution for certain actions that are taken as part of their official duties. There are disagreements among the legal community if not connected to their presidential duties. A president, while president, went and committed some kind of cold-blooded murder. Are they subject to prosecution? You can find legal opinions on both sides of that question, but that's not actually what we're talking about right now. And that immunity extends to certain actions taken after a president leaves office, but how far that goes is also a subject of legal debate. There are political considerations because the prosecution and theoretically the conviction of a former president on criminal charges is undoubtedly going to be a politicized event. And that can make it extraordinarily difficult for prosecutors to actually get a conviction. And if you do get one, you could have serious problems, as I mentioned, in terms of who was on that jury and the jury selection. And it's finding someone guilty in the court of public opinion is a very different thing than finding legal guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal court. You also have a burden of proof issue when going after a former president. You have that in general, but in order to get a conviction on criminal charges, prosecutors do need to establish the defendant's guilt beyond that reasonable doubt. In general, that's a tough standard in the American legal system. That's why we have many acquittals. But when the defendant is a former president, with access to every resource and advisors and the best lawyers, that can also be a significant challenge to overcome. And also, these things move slowly. Trump has been out of office now for just short of 2 years. And the passage of time can make it more difficult to secure convictions on criminal charges if there's a lot of distance from when the alleged crime took place. And this can be because of inability to locate witnesses who remember relevant issues or a loss of evidence or for a whole number of other reasons. And also it's important to consider that public sentiment can change. George W. Bush is a good example of this. And I've been careful on this program never to rehabilitate George W. Bush's image while acknowledging, like, okay, he's not as whacked as Trump in a lot of different ways. Right after George W. Bush left office, if you were to poll the American public, I think you would have found that there was significant support for going after Bush as a war criminal for his actions related to the Iraq War. My belief is, and this is just speculation, and maybe there's polling on this, I don't know, that if you polled the country now on that exact same question, you would find much less support for going after Bush for war crimes, even though the actions taken while he was president don't differ. Now, this is different than was he immune because these were actions taken in Iraq related to his work. It's not even a legal question. It's just a public opinion question. I believe that although the facts haven't changed since George W. Bush left office, the interest from the public in going after Bush for whatever wrongdoing he may have participated in would have been greatly diminished. And I do think that the longer that this goes without charges against Trump, that is potentially also going to be a factor. So Nick Akerman says criminal charges coming at the state and federal level. We will probably soon know, as so many things are now happening at once.